Hello, everyone. Dear participants, on behalf of IGBA, I would like to thank you for being here today for the launch of IGBA's report on intellectual property and competition. Welcome to the IGBA webinar on striving for balanced IP. In this webinar, we will first have Ms. Archana Jagta and Mr. Sergio Napolitano from IGBA Trade and IP Committee. They will give an overview of the IGBA report. Then to hear and gain perspectives from relevant stakeholders, we are pleased to have two panels of experts in intellectual property and competition today for two library panel discussions. In the first panel on access, we'll have a Professor Byung Misra from Patient Safety and Access Initiative of Trade India Foundations. Ms. Erika Duenas, IP lead at World Health Organizations, Professor Brooke Baker from Northeastern University, US, and Mrs. Flavia Kyomkama from International Alliance of Patients Organization. In a second panel on patents, we will have Mr. Carlos Correa from the South Center, Dr. Raghavendra from Ministry of Commerce and Industry, India, Mrs. Hail Pirajama from the European Patent Office, and Wolf Meyer Evert from World Trade Organizations. Thanks again, and we hope you will enjoy the discussions. Now, Mr. Lucas Sigman, the chair of IGBA CEO Advisory Committee, will now proceed to make the introduction of the report. Lucas, please.
Hello to everyone. Many thanks for being with us today. We are very happy to introduce this report. From IGBA, we believe very much on the IP system, and we do believe on balanced IP systems. I think what we are going to show on this report, which is several cases of patents that maybe they don't have the best possible use, only will help to have a more balanced IP system and a stronger one. So our aim is to have a strong IP system. So with this small introduction, I want to congratulate Archana and Sergio for the fantastic job. I hope all of you enjoy the webinar, and Archana and Sergio, please continue with the report.
Sergio, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. So we will give a brief presentation of the key highlights of the report that we are presenting today. We have a few slides that we are going to present. So before entering into the, and we can move with the slides, before entering into the details of the report, it would be good to provide a small overview of how the pharmaceutical system is conceived in relation to the IP and competition in general. You can move to the next slide. So this provides a visual of how the pharmaceutical system works. So you have normally originator companies coming up with a discovery. So when a new discovery is made, so a new product is actually made, there is a patent filing. So the patent protection for that product starts for a number of years, which is 20. And this has the objective to reward innovation, providing some reassurance of profits to the originator company. During this protection period of 20 years, generic and biosimilar medicines can already start being developed thanks to the so-called BOLAR exemption that allows generics and biosimilar to be ready as soon as the protection expires to enter the market. Once the generics and biosimilars enter the market, right after patent expiry, competition is guaranteed. And this is very good for the whole system because this is obviously bringing down costs for healthcare systems, but it's also increasing access to therapies for patients. This is obviously a simplification of a much more complex system because, as we will see, there are usually dozens, if not hundreds, of patents covering a product. But this gives a very good picture. You can move to the next slide. This is actually a balanced process which guarantees, as I mentioned, reward for innovation and competition, keeping in mind, obviously, that a patent is an exemption to the fundamental principle of competition. You can move to the next slide. What happens, however, often is that there are some obstacles that disrupt this balance process, and that happens when generic and biosimilars do not manage to enter the market as soon as patents expire. And that often the reason for that is that patents or regulatory systems are misused to unduly extend monopoly, which would fall under the so-called evergreening practices. And that's what triggered our work on the report. So Archana, up to you now.
Thank you, Sergio. Maybe we can move on to the next slide. Thank you, Sergio, for highlighting the process of patenting and how a balanced approach is designed to be. However, when the guardrails are misapplied, they create uncertainty, disrupt innovation, and limit patient access to medicines. This report outlines various market and legal strategies that contribute to the practice of extending the monopoly beyond the stipulated years of patent. The objective of this report is to promote a balanced legal and regulatory system, an approach that encourages innovation and allows timely launch of generic and biosimilar medicines. It also sheds light on complex dynamics in healthcare system and the interplay between IP, regulatory, and market access rules. Through this report, our intention is to raise awareness on the ongoing strategies in the pharma market that are leading to undue extensions of market protections. The ultimate goal is to support fair competition to mitigate the risk of extended monopolistic behavior globally, emphasizing on the patient-centric approach as fundamental. Next slide, please. The methodology that we have adopted is that we have assessed cases investigated and decided by courts and authorities. We have compiled instances and examples wherein certain practices have been implemented that have delayed the launch of generics and biosimilar medicines. The report, however, is not a non-exhaustive list because it's a collection of cases shared by our IGBA members. Obviously, these are based on the IGBA members' presence in some of the jurisdictions. So that way, it's a non-exhaustive list, and therefore the report is limited in terms of its geographical scope and cases or investigations that we have included. If you look at the structure of the report, it has a total 5 chapters, which contains patent and non-patent strategies, regulatory strategies, and also provides some suggestions. Can we move on to the next slide? In the report, we've covered 7 types of tactics or strategies that create obstacle for the timely launch of generics, and you can see, these strategies like patent thickets, patent linkage, product hopping, and several others in the slide. So these all 7 are covered in the report, and it would provide a lot of examples, which my colleague Sergio will take on now. Over to you, Sergio.
Thanks, Archana. And we can move to the next slide. So we have a very first example included in the report, which is a global example provided by WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, on ritonavir, for which there are over 800 patent families covering the product. This gives already the measure of the level of complexities that generic and biosimilar companies have to navigate in order to be able to enter the market and provide competition. Moving to the next slide, the report is also full of examples from all regions around the world, obviously. Just a few examples. We have, for instance, the case of Keytruda in the US, a cancer medicine with annual sales of almost $30 billion and with a patent ticket of 130 patents filed, with many more expected, which is something which is a pattern that we have already seen with Humira a few years ago, which could delay the launch of biosimilars for many years. If you go to the next one, Trajenta in India, it's a diabetes medicine for which generics were delayed by more than 1 year due to a patent ticket combined with preliminary injunction strategy, recognized by the Indian court to be a monopoly evergreening. If you go to the next one, we have an example from Italy, the Xalatan case, with a combination of divisional patent and patent linkage strategies, which delayed generics by 7 months and costed 14 million euro to the Italian healthcare system. Here, the company was also fined 13 million euro. The next one is an example of product hopping, the Gaviscon case in the United Kingdom. It's actually the example of product hopping because as soon as competition was about to arrive, the company launched another version of the original Gaviscon without withdrawing the old one. And according to the UK Competition Authority, this was done on purpose to prevent generic competition, which was also admitted by the company that agreed to pay a penalty of £10 million. The next one, we have also a case on pricing and tender strategies with Herceptin, trastuzumab in Romania, cancer medicine, where the originator was fined around 10 million for excluding biosimilars from tenders for several years. On the Humira case, which is the next one, adalimumab in Mexico, another cancer medicine with annual sales of billions, where the data exclusivity was unduly extended, delaying biosimilars by 16 years. And another one is, for instance, the next one, rituximab in Argentina, another pricing strategy on a cancer medicine where without this strategy, the Argentinians could have saved several millions. So these and many more are the examples provided in the report that really highlight how these strategies deploy around the world with their actual impact on patient access and on healthcare budgets. Archana.
Next slide, please. So the key findings, total 7 findings, main findings. First one, as you saw in the last slide, no region is immune from practices to delay the launch of generic and biosimilar medicines. Practices previously prevalent in jurisdictions with more sophisticated patent systems like US or Europe are now increasingly being observed in emerging markets. We have seen examples from Argentina, Mexico, India, and very many countries that you find in this report. The second key finding is, the same practices are being used across multiple regions for the same products. The third finding is multiple strategies are being employed in combination with same jurisdiction. The fourth key finding is these practices have been resulting in billions of dollars of loss, which risk the investments in the development of future medicines. And the fourth one that I would like to highlight is, these monopolistic practices have a strong impact on effective patent access to treatment, especially for more complex diseases where the entry of competitor product has been demonstrated to significantly increase the patient access rate. The last, but the very important one is the coexistence of 2 fundamental healthcare objectives, innovation and access, is being constantly disrupted by evergreening practices. Next slide, please. We also have a few high-level suggestions in the report that you'll find in the conclusion segment of the report. It is very clear from the findings of this report that regulatory, intellectual property, and market access rules need to be designed considering their possible interplay to prevent their possible misuse or abuse. And there is a need for greater international coordination between authorities to share information on practices leading to access to delays. Keeping this in perspective, three important aspects must be taken care of in the interest of patients. First is the quality of patents to protect real innovation. The second one being efficient and pro-competitive regulatory system. The third and very important one is how do we create a stronger involvement of competition authorities in policy making. So coordination at all front is extremely important to address this issue. Lastly, a balanced intellectual property system is crucial for both innovation and patient welfare and access to medicine. And we at International Generic and Biosimilar Medicines Association, we remain committed to this cause of making medicines available for patients across jurisdictions at an affordable price. With this, we invite you to please go through the report, which will be available on our website, and we'll post it on the chat section, the website address of ours. It is available, or please feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we're happy to share the report with you. Can we move on to the next segment? Thank you. We now move on to our first panel discussion, which will explore a very critical dimension of our discussion: intellectual property, innovation, and access. This panel will focus on the impact of the misuse of intellectual property and regulatory systems and the need to design frameworks that both protect innovation and ensure timely access of generics and biosimilar medicines. Access will remain at the heart of our conversation in this panel, and we are very honored to have a distinguished group of panelists joining us today. I know Shinichiro has already introduced, but I would love to just briefly introduce. With us today is Bejon Mishra, who is the founder director of Patient Safety and Access Initiative of India Foundation. We have Erika Dueñas, who's the IP lead, Access to Medicines and Health Products Division of WHO. We have Professor Brooke Baker from Northeastern University, and we have a very distinguished panelist, Flavia, who is the executive director representing International Alliance of Patients Organization. So we have a mix of really patient perspective, we have an academic perspective, and we also have intergovernmental body, WHO, representing in this panel. Thank you all for being part of this discussion, and we have a total of 20 minutes. So I would request each panelist to keep their responses to 3 to 4 minutes. Without further delay, let me begin with my first question. Erika, this one is for you. And the first question that we all have in mind, do you believe that establishing a more balanced intellectual property system and improving patent quality would positively impact global access to medicines?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for your question and for inviting WHO to this presentation. Congratulations for the efforts made on this study. And I'm very happy to answer your question and tell you that, as you know, in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, universal health coverage is for WHO a top priority And access to essential medicines and health technologies is a key component of universal health coverage. So we really believe that there are many key policies to improve access to health technologies, but application and management of intellectual property play a very important role on that. So we know that price is a critical determinant of access to health technologies, and that high expenditures for health technologies and prices for new medical technologies place also increasing pressure on all health systems in terms of availability to provide full and affordable access to health products. So in that sense, as you know, we have in WHO since a long time the WHO Global Strategy on Public Health, Innovation and Intellectual Property. And in several resolutions, the World Health Assembly urged member states, WHO, and other international organizations and stakeholders to strengthen efforts on the implementation of these recommendations of this global strategy. This global strategy represents also a priority of actions to be taken by the different stakeholders in relation to new thinking on needs-driven innovation and access to diseases that disproportionately affect developing countries. So one of the key elements of this strategy is the application and management of intellectual property to contribute to innovative and to innovate and to promote public health. And of course, among all the points, there is a crucial need to strengthen capacity and management of IP in developing countries, and also use to the full of the TRIPS flexibilities to protect public health. So these are the main things. I'm very happy to add. We published recently the new implementation plan 2024 to 2026 that includes all these recommendations in relation to intellectual property. WHO has also published several access reports in relation to different diseases, hepatitis C, HIV, COVID-19, where we identified barriers of intellectual property where patents impact technology transfer and generic entry of medicines into the market. So as you mentioned very, very well in your presentation, not only the regular 20 years of protection of exclusivity are already per se a barrier, but then if you have secondary patents, combinations, uses, second uses, patent term extensions, other market exclusivities, that complicates more the picture. So that is why, and I'm going to finish here, WHO always recommend member states to use all the legal tools they have available to promote access and technology transfer. And that means pricing policies, that means voluntary licenses, of course, but sometimes we know that they are not very effective because they limit the geographical scope or they have other restrictions. The TRIPS flexibilities, including the use of competition laws and policies, are very important. Patent oppositions in their national laws, strict patentability criteria as well to facilitate local production. That is another very important point. So I'm going to stop here, but I'm very happy to answer further questions.
Thank you, Erika, for providing that perspective from WHO's perspective. Maybe I can move to Bijon. And Bijon, if I would love to ask you, would you say that this undue extension of patents and more broadly the competition issues that disrupt market functioning have an impact on patients? And how do you think these practices affect the patient choices?
Thank you. Thank you, Archana. Firstly, let me congratulate IGBA for releasing this excellent report. And Sergio and Archana, you really made us walk through some very revealing facts which has come out of this report. So a big congratulations to all of you. So as a patient organization advocacy person working for 4 decades in India on empowering citizens and the consumers to make an informed choice, these kinds of conversation and reports are tools for empowerment. I look at it as an excellent tool for empowering and also advocacy in bringing in amendments to existing laws, regulations, and regulatory oversights. So what a patient looks at, and let me tell you, all of us who are here today and all my friends who are listening to me, that the best friend of the consumer is competition. And when you bring in competition, you actually empower the patients to make an informed choice. And in order to make an informed choice, the key ingredient is credible information. How do you make credible information made accessible to the patient or the caregivers to make an informed choice based on an information or an empowerment which is credible? And when I mean credible, means it is trustworthy. So building trust is very important. And when I went through the presentation, which Sergio and Archana, you all made us walk through, the key factor which comes in is there is a great need for institutions like IGBA to be able to build some kind of a mechanism where there is a strong engagement with patients group to encourage innovation, because we are all in favor of innovation. And innovation comes through patients' feedback, through customers' feedback. And that is where we need to capture in terms of building mechanisms where you engage with patients and listen to them and understand what are their challenges and plight which they're going through. And in order to do that, I feel such organizations like IGBA should be able to not only empower individuals, but empower groups like ours to work in our respective countries, to be able to also convince the lawmakers and the policymakers to bring those kind of changes, which is today as deemed to be unfair trade practice. I like that word, Archana, which you used, tactics. Strategy is good. We need good strategy, but we don't need unethical practices to prevail. We want that the practices should become such that it is accepted as ethical. And we want to encourage such trade where the practices are ethical, transparent, accountable. And in order to do that, I think IGBA can play a great role globally in empowering the citizens and the consumers to be able to understand how they should move in terms of discouraging such tactics or such unfair trade practices. And as you all know, that India is one of the leading countries in protecting the rights of the consumers. And way back in 1986, we brought out a legislation which legally enshrined 6 rights to the consumers. And the most important rights are not only safety and quality, but the most important right is choice. So here I would like to close by saying that empowering citizens to make an informed choice should be our agenda for tomorrow. And IGBA should develop a mechanism not only for small countries or for countries like India, but for the globe. There should be one kind of a call-in number, I would say, where anybody from anywhere in the world can call in IGBA and be able to share their feedback, so that from that feedback, IGBA not only goes towards innovation and getting ready for, when the patent is free to be made a property of the individual, IGBA gets into action to ensure that no legality, no barriers are created, and patient groups also get engaged in their respective countries to ensure that there is no delay tactics and there is no evergreen tactics adopted anywhere in the globe. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it will be nice to listen to everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Bijan. So empowering consumer fair practices is a way to look forward, and at IGBA would definitely be striving for this interplay between competition and access for sure. Flavia, are you there with us? I don't think. Maybe we can move on to Brooke, Professor Brooke Baker, coming from, we would love to have an academic perspective on what do you see as the key elements which are required to create the balanced IP system that would provide a global access to these life-saving medicines, Professor? Professor, we can't hear you.
Sorry. So thanks so much for this opportunity to speak to this audience, which is vitally important to the project of bringing affordable medicines more comprehensively to people, particularly in the global South, who go without. The report is largely based on the assumption that the generics and biosimilar industry is content to manufacture and market off-patent medicines, but that it opposes the innovator industry's efforts to game the system, the patent system in particular, through patent evergreening, regulatory exclusivities, product hopping, and similar methods that broaden and lengthen the period of monopoly control. But balance is not achieved solely via patent expiration after 20 years. We know that 20 years is too long for people who are poor and people who live in developing countries to wait for vital medical technologies that will save and extend their lives. A system is not balanced if it makes well over half the world's population wait for 20 years for medicines that are available to me in a rich country because I have the very best insurance for myself. And so the TRIPS agreement has flexibilities, which Erica mentioned, as well as patent expiration as ways to balance the system. I wonder if the generics and biosimilar industry shouldn't have broader objectives to more fully meet the needs and unmet needs of patients in low and middle income countries. And also the need for more regionally distributed biomedical and pharmaceutical capacity to increase global health security in the global South. Does your industry need more freedom to innovate incrementally and earlier to make medicines easier to use, more long-lasting, more stable, formulated for children as well as for adults, and greener? Does your industry want and need to be able to provide newer on-patent medicines to the global South patients when innovator prices are too high and when they delay or even worse, decline to serve low and middle income markets? I think the answer to these questions should be yes, because an IP system that denies this access is not balanced. It is imbalanced. And thus your industry should more fully address strategies needed to overcome intellectual property and other barriers, regulatory barriers in particular, that impede equitable and affordable access to therapeutically equivalent medicines that you are capable of producing. Voluntary licensing, as Erica mentioned, is certainly one available strategy and has been used successfully for some medicines and by members of your association. Antiretroviral medicines are perhaps the most prominent example where millions of lives and billions of dollars have been saved because, frankly, in many cases, early entry by the generic producers, equivalent producers, through voluntary licensing negotiated via the medicine patent pool and sometimes bilaterally. But voluntary licenses are not available across all diseases, nor to all regions, and innovators still consistently and jealously guard their more commercially profitable territories, again, as Erica mentioned. Accordingly, your industry and the low and middle income countries where you are located should also support compulsory license licenses to create freedom to operate and freedom to amass viable, aggregated import-export markets where the regional producers can supply the unmet needs of regional consumers. Moreover, given the complexity of biological medicines and vaccines and the growing therapeutic importance of medicines based on monoclonal antibody technologies and messenger RNA-based technologies, you also need access to know-how, to assays, to manufacturing practices that are now overprotected by trade secret law. Your report focuses almost exclusively on the patent barriers presented by IP barriers presented by patents, but frankly neglects to address the increasingly problematic area of technology transfer to overcome trade secret protections. Although you can painfully and expensively develop these technologies and know-how on your own, you instead need governments to facilitate, incentivize, and even demand technology transfer through exceptions to absolute trade secret protection. And of course, there have been proposals by academics and others for compulsory licenses on trade secrets and greater access to manufacturing know-how that is submitted to regulatory authorities. This is only a partial list of the steps that you should consider and might consider in broadening your impacts on health to meet the unmet needs of populations and that are currently underserved by the innovator industry.
Thank you, Professor Baker, for providing your perspective, and we're glad to hear on the flexibilities that you touched upon, and probably our industry will be able to explore it more and more and see how we can commit to the patient welfare from this perspective. Flavia, coming back, can you hear us? I don't think she can hear us, as she has an internet issues, I reckon, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So we would like to wrap up this session, but thank you all for your valuable insights. We are confident, and I'm sure the audience has also gained a clear understanding of what is needed to strengthen the access and achieve the right balance between IP, competition, and access. In the next session that my colleague Sergio would be moderating the session, we'll do another deep dive into this interface of IP, competition, and access. Over to you, Sergio.
Thanks a lot, Archana. And indeed, this session is going to focus on the main flaws in the intellectual property and in the regulatory systems that allow undue extensions of the monopoly, and how the system could include the right guardrails to safeguard innovation, competition, and the credibility of the IP system. Because, of course, if and when competition authorities intervene, it means that there's been a failure somewhere in the system, and therefore we need to have a strong, efficient, and bulletproof patent system, but also a regulatory system related to pharmaceuticals. So let me welcome the four panelists we have here. Dr. Carlos Correa, Executive Director of the South Center, Dr. Raghavender, Senior Consultant on IPR and former Joint Secretary of the Department of Justice in India, Heli Pialajama, Principal Director on Patent Law and Procedures at the European Patent Office, and last but not least, Wolf Meyer Ewert, Counselor of the IP and Competition Division at the WTO, the World Trade Organization. So thanks a lot for joining. Let me start perhaps with Dr. Correa, which can give us a perspective from the South Center, a very important intergovernmental think tank. Do you see a globalization of misuses or abuses of the patent system? And if that's the case, what do you think is the common denominator? Dr.
Well,
Correa.
thank you very much, Sergio. Thank you for inviting the South Center. As you mentioned, it's an intergovernmental organization of developing countries. We have worked quite a lot in this area of pharmaceuticals and the barriers that are set by the intellectual property system. We have worked in particular in relation to the three flexibilities we have mentioned. Let me start by thanking you again, and also by thanking for the production of this very good report, an excellent report, very factual. I think you have made a great contribution with examples from many countries, both in the area of chemical synthesis products and also biologicals. I think this is one of the best reports I've seen that shows how the system is misused by some companies in order to delay or block generic competition, which is so important in order to facilitate access, in particular in developing countries. So in replying your question more specifically, Sergio, the reply is fully yes. There are globalized, these practices are globalized. So you find them all in developed as well in developing countries. The South Center has made a large number of training courses for judges, for patent examiners, for policymakers, mainly from the Ministry of Health. And in all of these countries we have worked in, there have been many cases in which these practices have been clearly made. And certainly you mentioned many countries in your report, including India, Mexico, Canada, Spain, South Africa, Japan, so on and so forth, but the phenomenon is clearly globalized. I would like to make a second observation, and this is the fact that is very well reflected in your report, that these practices of evergreening and other strategies in order to delay generic competition does not take place only in relation to drugs that are produced through chemical synthesis, but importantly also in the area of biologicals. And this is crucial. This was not recognized some time ago, but this is crucial because of the growing importance of biologicals as health tools, and also because of the high price of biologicals. That means in many cases these medicines are simply not affordable to people in developing countries. So these strategies are certainly harmful in all countries, including rich countries, but they affect a lot people in developing countries, because this becomes a matter of life and death. In many cases, these practices mean that people cannot get access to the medicines that they need. So congratulations again for addressing this important issue. A third observation is that many of these strategies are actually the outcome of what I would say call wrong policies. For instance, the so-called patent linkage, which is pushed by the United States through free trade agreements, but there is no obligation whatsoever under the TRIPS agreement to establish the so-called patent linkage. The same with data exclusivity. There is no obligation to impose data exclusivity. Many countries such as Argentina, India, and others do not provide and fully compliant with the TRIPS agreement. There is a number of countries where these patents on second medical indications are accepted. There is no obligation whatsoever to do that, and many countries, including mine and others, do reject patents on this, and then they reduce these misuse, these strategies that delay generic and legitimate competition. So I think there is a significant room in order to improve policies in a more pro-competitive manner, in order to allow facilitate generic competition. The fourth observation is that there are also some judicial practices, which are shown in your report as well, that are inadequate. For instance, in cases where preliminary injunctions are granted without sufficient investigation. And this is, of course, something that helps some patent holders and other right holders to prevent generic competition. And there is also the possibility of improving these practices. There is no need to change, in many cases, the laws, just to improve the practices by the judiciary. And in this sense, I think the interaction with judiciary of different countries is very important. And finally, an observation regarding patent examination. In my view, in our view, this is crucial. the need for a rigorous examination of patent application of pharmaceuticals, both biological and synthesis chemical drugs. This has been done, as you know, by Argentina. It's mentioned in your report, the successful application of the guidelines in Argentina that has prevented the grant of patents on a very large.
I think we have lost. Oh, sorry, Dr. Correa. Go ahead. Sorry, we lost you for a few seconds. So thanks a lot.
I was.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was mentioning the case of the guidelines in Argentina that are referred to in your report has prevented the grant of a large number of patent applications that were aiming at protecting polymorphs, formulations, not real innovation. And I think that many countries.
Perfect, Dr. Correa. Thanks a lot for.
I'm sorry.
This. I'm sorry.
Just to say that we are going to help to disseminate your report and also ensure that what is needed is innovation, for sure, but innovation without access does not make sense. So thank you very much again for your important contribution.
Thanks a lot, Carlos. I think you spoke about policies and policy choices. I think sometimes there are also policies that actually allow certain strategies to take place, so legitimate behaviors that then result in anti-competitive effects. Moving to India, Dr. Raghavendra, I think India has a unique approach to establishing a balanced IP system. Can I ask you what type of measures are in place to prevent the misuse or abuse of the patent system in India?
Thank you. I would like to thank all the participants for indulging in the very interesting discussion, and also congratulate IGBA for releasing the excellent report on the biosimilar generic and biosimilar medicines. Now, Indian policy is well aware, right from the 1970 Patent Act, which was introduced by the Parliament. It strived for the medicines to be accessible, so and affordable to the general public. Because the British law, which was introduced in 1911, which not encouraged the manufacturing of affordable and accessible medicines. So 1970 Patent Act introduced only patenting process medicines, not the product medicines, and also allowed reverse engineering. So these policy tools helped emergence of global leaders in the pharma from India, like Ciplas and Pharma, Dr. Reddy's, for instance. Then when TRIPS agreement came, WTO TRIPS agreement, when India was negotiating, it made sure that the Article 7 and 8, the general principles and obligations, allow the balancing of the rights, IP rights, including flexibilities everywhere. So India introduced all these tools of flexibilities to make available, affordable, and accessible medicine in India. That led to the growth of Indian pharma industry. That is the reason why during the COVID time, India pharma industry power, the pharmacy of the world was reinforced. And you may be aware that the Indian policies help to dominate in this area, generic and biosimilars. So almost 60% of the global vaccine demand, and including the US, which puts in India in the priority watch list, cannot avoid buying 40% of their generic products from India. So we introduce a most important policy tool to support the generic pharma industry, that is Section 3D, which does not allow minor or incremental modifications of existing drugs. It will not allow any evergreening or patent tickets, etc. And we have a very good policy which adopted from the TRIPS, the exceptions and limitations. We have a compulsory license provision, and government use provisions, research and education provisions, including the most important experimental use provision, BOLA provision, a BOLA exception that allows the generic biosimilar drug pharma industry to be ready with their reverse engineered and different process produce biosimilar medicines before the patent of big pharma expires. So we don't follow even data exclusivity and patent linkage. And these are the other tools which help our generic pharma industry to provide accessible medicines. And then we have other government policies like National List of Essential Medicines. During the COVID period, not only the patented drugs, big pharma drugs, including the generic drugs, the government came out with the, the price policy so that it ensures the equitable access to safe, effective, and affordable medicines during the COVID pandemic. So all these policies made India, important, and also our laws do not, infringe any of the international treaties or convention to which India is a member. We are fully compliant with the minimum standards, either TRIPS or the any other patent conventions or treaties.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Wagner, for this very good perspective from India. Let me move to Europe now, to Mrs. Pilar-Germain from the EPO. So we know that obviously the role of patent offices is pivotal to ensure high quality, not only of patents, those patents that are actually granted, but also of the granting procedures that we see from the report may contribute to evergreening strategies. In what ways the EPO working to strengthen its safeguards while keeping efficiency of the office?
Thank you very much for giving EPO also the word here, and also thank you very much for the report and for collecting in the report all the different aspects, which of course some are outside of the patent system and more point towards competition law aspects, but to have everything together in one report, that is of course very useful and informative to collect all information together. I would like to address two aspects in my short contribution, namely the question of quality of the patent prosecution, patent granting systems, and secondly then the evergreening topic and how and if what is the patent system there. I would like to start by saying that the European Patent Office, as the patent granting authority for Europe, is fully aware about the economic and societal impact of the topic that you address in the report and in the panel discussion today. We from the EPO, we are not only following the discussions closely, but we also really very much interact and like to interact with various stakeholders. Only yesterday, we presented a statistical report on the use of divisional applications with a specific focus on pharma sector to our 39 contracting states. And with these interactions, the feedback from users is very important to us. That's why we have a very comprehensive outreach program to really gather user feedback from multiple sources. For example, at the moment, we have online user consultation on our guidelines to get input there. And we have online complaints and feedback channel, onboard service. And we also, when it comes to the quality of the patents we grant, we have so-called quality assurance panels where users give us feedback based on patents granted or refused patent applications on how well we have been doing our work, and that's the way we get valuable input and gather a rich diversity of perspectives on substantive quality of the work we do. Of course, what we see is that patent quality is a shared responsibility. There are the applicants, you were talking about strategies and policies. So of course, it is also for the applicants how they act. What we also see is that we have the legal framework, but our people who work at the EPO, they are also the foundation of quality. And therefore, at the EPO, we invest a lot on in the professional development and the tools our examiners use. The three-person search and examining divisions and the quality checks done by line managers, they also pertain to the quality of the patents granted, as well as the quality auditors who work then to check also internally on the quality. We publish a lot of information, so therefore, for your next study as well, I would very much like to recommend you to look at the EPO website, where we have a quality section where we publish the very clear goals for our key performance indicators, how we want to develop further in the quality, and where we also have our quality action plan and quality dashboard that are published there to give information on the quality of the patent grant system at the EPO, where we compare different factors. Then
Indeed, Ellie, sorry, I was just mentioning, indeed, we are going to, this is a starting point for our collaboration towards stronger patent systems. If you are okay, I would move to Wolf also for the sake of time to just provide us a bit of a more global perspective on the well-functioning interplay between IP and the regulatory system, which is obviously a prerequisite for healthy competition and also for, as a consequence, liberalization of trade. So what role does the WTO play in ensuring this delicate balance between IP and competition? Wolf.
Thank you, Sergio, and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting the WTO to contribute to this panel. Let me just say that I'm speaking in my personal capacity and without prejudice to the WTO Secretariat and its members' positions. Having said this, I want to congratulate you too for this comprehensive report, which is, I think, an excellent contribution to the discussion in this area. What role does the WTO play? Well, I think I'll start with saying that the WTO rulebook and the TRIPS agreement provides members with tools and flexibility to calibrate and achieve the balance between rights and obligations in the IP system that they would find appropriate in their national jurisdiction. As you know, international treaties, and this has been mentioned a couple of times during this seminar, provide standards at the international level, but the actual operation of IP systems happens at the national level. So it is really the implementation by members that plays a very big role. So the role of the WTO, let me mention, I think, three quick points also in the interest of time. The first one is, and I'm helped here by my previous speakers, the first one is that the balance between rights and obligations and the particular importance of safeguarding public health are elements that are mentioned front and center in the TRIPS agreement in Articles 7 and 8. So this is a recognition that a balanced implementation is necessary to actually provide the benefits of the IP system. And this is particularly important in the context of pharmaceutical protection, as highlighted by your report. So to find the right balance at the national level is allowed by the interpretation of many of the legal terms in the TRIPS agreement. So patentability criteria, various interpretations are possible, and a myriad of interpretations is alive in different member jurisdictions, whether to favor incremental innovation and permit this by a open interpretation of the patentability criteria, or a stricter one like the Indian 3D or the Philippines Article 26, which has been mentioned. The same is, of course, true for test data protections. Already mentioned that the standard in the TRIPS agreement in Article 39.3 is the protection of unfair commercial use, and that there is a broad range of interpretation of what that means among different members. There is, of course, the possibility of having exceptions under Article 30. Professor Baker mentioned his interest in the activities of the IGBA during the patent term, not just after patent expiry, what the report focuses on. And there, of course, the three-step test is the standard that allows for various shades of exceptions during the patent term. Finally, also in the enforcement area, the Article 50 does provide for the requirement that provisional measures and injunctions must be possible in WTO members, but it is not an obligation to issue them at any particular time. So there is, of course, flexibility at the national level to create and prescribe the conditions in this regard. So I think it's important that these flexibilities are there, that members know about them, and WTO members at the level of the WTO have emphasized them in the Doha Declaration on Public Health. And again, in the MC12 ministerial decision on the TRIPS agreement, emphasizing the need for agency at the national level to make policy decisions on this basis, to use those tools provided in the TRIPS agreement to craft the balance that's necessary. The second point I want to make is the relationship to competition. Now, TRIPS sets standards for intellectual property and patents, but there is no equivalent international standard for competition rules. But TRIPS recognizes, of course, that certain practices can be abuses of intellectual property rights and that competition policy may be necessary at the national level to correct this. There are no negotiations on competition standards at the WTO at the moment, but we do provide technical assistance on competition questions to our members. And in that context, we emphasize the importance of that discipline to counterbalance certain possible abuses as recognized in Article 40 of the TRIPS agreement. Finally, I think what the WTO and the TRIPS Council can offer to inform members is a platform and a source of reliable information, empowerment, as Bejon Misra mentioned before. We do this through a lot of our outreach and technical assistance. We do it through very fruitful cooperation with WHO and WIPO in the trilateral cooperation. This has produced the trilateral study, which is called Promoting Access to Medical Technologies and Innovation, in its second edition, which provides a lot of detailed information on the interpretation of the flexibilities. And if I may, the trilateral cooperation also holds periodical activities. The next one is on the 26th of February, and that is indeed a trilateral briefing on exchanges of experience amongst members on the use of flexibilities and the encouragement of innovation. I think I'll stop here.
Thanks a lot, Wolf.
I can see that we've run out of time. Yes.
But this was a very interesting discussion. I think we have to continue our constructive dialogue towards quality of the patent system and pro-competitive pharmaceutical ecosystem. So this is, as I mentioned, a very good starting point. I really want to thank you very much, and I want to pass the floor to Jim Keon, who is going to make the closing of this webinar. Thanks a lot, everyone. Jim, up to you.
All right, thank you, Sergio. Well, wow, we had quite an impressive 1 hour session today. It was a very ambitious session. I think first I would like to say is congratulations to the IGBA Intellectual Property and Trade Committee. A very impressive paper, as one of our speakers, Carlos Correa, mentioned. Very many examples of the types of concepts that are indicated. And the other thing we found, and Archana and Sergio pointed this out very well, is that these practices are global. The same types of practices we find throughout much of the OECD countries, as well as developed and developing countries. And this is why I think the IGBA report is so important. What we are looking for is a balance between innovation and access. We are not in favor at all of abuses of the patent system. We have to recognize the patent system has its value in spurring innovation, but we need the access. Today we heard from experts from the UN agencies, patent offices, academia, competition authorities, patent organizations, insurance organizations, as well as our industry. We heard that access is extremely important. Universal health coverage is extremely reliant on generic and biosimilar medicines, providing competition, providing good pricing, and we need a fair and balanced system. The WTO agreement, the TRIPS agreement, has flexibilities. A number of the speakers pointed those out, some of our expert speakers, in terms of the flexibilities, and encouraged IGBA to work with governments and the international organizations to ensure that those types of flexibilities are used when appropriate. The experience we've had so far is that it's extremely difficult to use those flexibilities, and that they have not proven to be too effective to date. So we need more work to be done there. A number of types of patent, abuses or tactics, whether it's patent linkage systems, product hopping, patent thickets, excessive patenting of indications. All of those tactics have been experienced and require balancing back from our government and international organizations, national and international government organizations. I know in Canada, I'm the president of the Canadian Association. We have patent indications, inability to carve out or use the so-called skinny label, which is preventing products from coming on the market. We have excessive incentives on the patent owner side to protect patents, weak incentives for generics and biosimilars to challenge. So these are, I know firsthand, these are issues. We're seeing with this excellent paper that these are international global issues. IGBA, our role is to ensure that this information gets out. I think our group has done a great job with this paper. We want to take it internationally. We're also going to encourage all our industry associations nationally to promote this paper, to get the message out, and to try and improve and get a better balance between innovation and access within the patent system. So again, thank you, everybody. Thank you to our expert speakers. Thank you, Archana and Sergio, for hosting us. And with that, I think I will close our session.